We're continuing our sermon series in Revelation. The 7 churches of Revelation receive letters from the resurrected Jesus. We've been reflecting upon those letters. John dictates these letters and eventually delivers them to them. What do they say, and how does what they say inform our faith? 7 churches: Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. We reflected on Ephesus and Smyrna this morning. This morning we are reflecting on Pergamum. What does it have to say to us? Now, the interpretive strategy we have been taking is that there's meaning in what the letter said to the churches then, and that meaning is what will inform the churches now. There are some strategies of reading the book of Revelation that focus simply on what does it say to us now. What does Revelation say about the end time? And I'm just not taking that strategy. I think it were the churches that were written to then. If they were to think, well, this letter only speaks of the end times 2,000 years from now, then it wouldn't have meant much to them. What would be the point of delivering it to these churches if it was only meant for churches 2,000 years later? So I don't think it is either or. I think it is both and. I think it was meant for the churches then, and something about what Jesus was saying, as John dictated to the churches then, informs our faith now. Does it relate to the end times? I am sure. The substance of the book of Revelation does have content that speaks directly about the end of the age, or God ushering in his kingdom in its fullest. So if you think the end of the age is the end of the world as we know it and the ushering in of God's kingdom to its full, then yes, Revelation is definitely about the end of time. But we reflect on it in regard to what Jesus is saying to the churches then, and are asking ourselves, exactly how does this inform our faith? We start by reflecting on the context. So Pergamum, one of the 3 main cities in Asia Minor, Ephesus and Smyrna being the other 2 major cities in Asia Minor at the time. Be kind of like the Triangle in North Carolina: Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. These were the 3 big cities. Pliny the Elder, a Roman historian in the 1st and 2nd century, would say that Pergamum was actually the primary Roman city. It eventually would raise in ranks to, technically speaking, what is called a metropolis. If you don't know, that's a city that grows more than 50,000 in inhabitants. It would actually grow bigger than that, but at the time, a metropolis was the largest city around. It was famous for many things. It had an acropolis, it had a stadium, it had an amphitheater. It had the best library around, held 200,000 different manuscripts, separate writings, and many of these manuscripts were being written on something brand new, a new sort of medium of media. At the time, it was parchment. No one had ever heard of it. This came out of Pergamum. And not only were they cutting edge in that way, but they also, it was an export of theirs. So it was a city that also had bustling business, kind of like Smyrna did big business in myrrh. Pergamum did big business in parchment. And because of this, they too had business guilds, big business. Eventually, they would hold about 200,000 inhabitants. The highest point in the city is about 1,000 feet high. They worshiped several different gods, the main one being Asclepius. Now that name might not ring a bell, but to those who are in the medical community, it likely does. Asclepius, the symbol of Asclepius is the rod with the snake going around it. That started here at Pergamum. So it was a very prominent city. It was a very cutting-edge city. It was a very well-to-do city. And it was prominent, cutting edge, and well-to-do in the dominant power on the planet. Okay, so sort of well-to-do, if you will. They thought very highly of themselves, kind of like the folks in New York are thinking of themselves right now, as if they have all the power on the planet, because in the most dominant country in the world, they're whatever. I really don't even want to think about that right now. So the letter is coming in that context. It is coming to this type of city, and the first thing that Jesus says to John has to do, I think, with the well-to-do nature of the city. So let me go ahead and read the letter. It's in Revelation chapter 2. I will read the whole letter because it's not long. It's verse 12 through 17. I want to focus today on the final verse, verse 17. So here is the letter to Pergamum from Jesus, dictated by John to the church at Pergamum. When he says to the angel of, it means to the messenger. He is likely meaning to the leader or pastor. To the angel of the church of Pergamum, write, dictate this, say this. These are the words of him who has a sharp double-edged sword. I know where you live, where Satan has his throne. Yet you remain true to my name. You did not renounce your faith in me, even in the days of Antipas, my faithful witness, who was put to death in your city where Satan lives. Nevertheless, I have a few things against you. You have people there who hold to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to entice the Israelites to sin by eating food sacrificed to idols and by committing sexual immorality. Likewise, you also have those who hold to the teaching of the Nicolaitans. Repent, therefore. Otherwise, I will soon come to you and will fight against them with the sword of my mouth. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, I will give some of the hidden manna. I will also give him a white stone with a new name written on it, known only to him and who receives it. This is the word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God. Amen. So, for starters, writing to you who live where Satan has his throne. My question as I'm reading that is, well, what exactly does that mean, where Satan has its throne? I think it has mostly to do with the pride that folks had there in Pergamum. If you look at Isaiah chapter 14, what he says about Satan, this is the seat of Satan where Satan dwells. What it says about Satan, I think, is what Jesus is saying about Pergamum. Isaiah says in 14:12 about Satan, as he falls, he names him Lucifer, cuts down to the ground. As he's fallen, he falls because Lucifer said this, I will ascend, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, meaning I will elevate myself in status to the place of or above even God. I will sit on the mount of the congregation. I will elevate my power even above the church. I will ascend to the clouds. I will be even above nature. I will be like the Most High. So the point that Isaiah makes of Satan, if you want to know what the character of Satan is, to understand what Jesus is saying here of Pergamum, is that what Satan wanted to do, the reason why God cast him out of heaven, is because Satan wanted the status of God. And that's one thing to want to be like God. I think that is something that God calls us to do. But in what way? What Lucifer wanted, what really got God pretty not happy, was that Lucifer wanted to be like God in status. Now, if you compare that to something else, you sort of get what I'm saying. He didn't say, I want to be like God in character. In other words, Satan didn't say, I want to be like God in that I am the most kind person that anyone around me knows. I want to be like God in that I'm the most gracious person around me that anyone knows. This is not what Lucifer is saying. I want to be like God in that I'm the most forgiving person that anyone around me knows. I want to be like God in that I'm the most patient person that anyone knows. I want to be like God in that I'm the most prayerful person, or I'm the most humble person. This wanting to be like God had nothing to do with God's character. It was about simply wanting God's status, God-like status, to be elevated in place of God. And I think this is what Jesus was dictating to John about Pergamum. They are wanting to take the place of me in status, not in character, but in status. And if you continue to be influenced by them, you will lose your light. I think that was the word. He goes on to say that now you have held on to your faith even at a time when Antipas, my faithful witness who was put to death in your city. So to some extent, they were keeping the faith. They were saying with their mouth that they were Christians, even though there was persecution going on. Antipas was someone who was recorded in the 7th century by Andrew of Caesarea, that he was indeed martyred, and he was also someone who was appointed by John, the one that Jesus is dictating to, as the elder of Pergamum. So he was the leading pastor there at Pergamum and was put to death. And even though he was burned sometime in between 54 and 68 AD, they still remained faithful in word. But Jesus was saying something like, the pride of Pergamum may be creeping into your life to the extent that though you confess with your mouth that you are indeed Christian, the light of your witness may go out if you continue to let that culture influence your faith. So he says something very specific a little further in the letter. He mentions Balaam. Now, here's a quick lesson to anyone if you're not a student of Scripture. To truly understand a lot in the New Testament, you have to understand the idea that many of the texts are hyperlinked to the Old Testament. In other words, the best way to understand something in the New Testament is to also understand the story that it's referring to in the Old Testament. And these, let's call them hyperlinks, happen literally thousands of times. Just as I explained Satan earlier by hyperlinking it to Isaiah's passage on how Lucifer or Satan fell from the sky, understanding the teaching of Balaam that was coming from Pergamum and influencing the church there at Pergamum, understanding that, you can only understand it by understanding what the story of the prophet Balaam was in the Old Testament. So if you want to read it in its entirety, it's Numbers 22 through 24. But I'll give you the essence of it. Just know, take this with you, that to fully understand things in the New Testament, you cannot separate it from the Old Testament. Too many hyperlinks. Balaam was called to be a prophet to Israel as it began walking in the promised land. So as they were conquering land, Balaam was a prophet. Now, one of the kings of the land that they were walking into was a king of Moab. His name was Balak. Okay, now I'm not going to lose you here. It's not hard to understand. Balak, the king of Moab, wanted Balaam, the prophet of Israel, to cast a curse on Israel, and so offered him a good sum of money. Now, it doesn't ever say in the story, if you read Numbers 22 through 24, that Balak ever took the money. But eventually what happened was Balaam couldn't call the curse, though he sort of tried. He couldn't call the curse. In fact, as he went to call the curse, this is one of the craziest parts of the story, his donkey got in his way. And Balaam started beating his donkey, okay? So much that his donkey spoke to him and said, "Why are you beating me?" All right, now this is a bizarre story. This is probably why, Shrek had a lot of different characters from a lot of different stories you may not know. Really, the talking donkey comes from here. I mean, there's no other story with like a talking donkey. And so the donkey's like, why are you beating me? Now that's miracle one. The next miracle, which is crazy, is that Balaam spoke back. But the weird thing is not just that he spoke back, it's what he said. Because you're not helping me. Now, if I was talking back to a donkey, I don't think that's what I would have said. I think I would have said, you can talk? Something like that. But nevertheless, that and a few other instances, Balaam was not able to call the curse. And so something happened with Balaam and Balak to where they planned to do the curse a different way, to intermarry Israel's men with Moabite women. And this is how the curse came upon Israel. Read the story yourself. And so a direct attack didn't work through the curse. And so the curse came by the culture slowly seeping in to Israel. And by the culture of the Moabites, I mean extreme loose sexuality and the worship of other gods. This is what I believe Jesus is saying to the church there at Pergamum. You are letting the culture of the world around you seep in to your church. And as you do that, you continue to lose your light. It's going to affect your prayer time. It's going to affect how often you gather in my name. It's going to affect your willingness to be generous in my name. It's going to affect how often you serve in my name. It's going to, and all of this is going to affect your witness. Pridefully finding security. I think this is the concise word that Jesus is saying through John. Pridefully finding your security and your significance in things other than God diminishes your light, and it allows a curse to happen upon God's church. You may not know that there continues to be a city in Smyrna, Izmir, I believe the name of it is, and there continues to be a church. So their light did not go out. Their lampstand was not removed. There is no longer a city in Pergamum, and there is no longer a church in Pergamum. The culture seeped in, and the light went out. This was the call. So when culture creeps in and becomes competitive with us in regard to where we place our significance and our status, Jesus is saying this should be in God. Nothing should elevate itself in your heart above God, which is what Satan did, wanted to elevate itself with God. When culture creeps in and becomes our significance and our status, our light goes out. So a word to all of us. There are things in our culture that are competing for significance and status in our heart. For one, I think money is a big one. That was the sin of Balaam. If you read other passages in the New Testament, Balaam is connected to selling out God for a price. And maybe part of our culture is the pursuit of money and how that sort of elevates in status in our heart above God. The sexual immorality of the day, I think, definitely has a place. Both of these things can cause the light in our heart to dim. And I think, name your specific issue that can elevate in you ascribing significance and status in your heart, but it all boils down to you, rather than following God's word, sort of following your own sense of what's going to make you happy. Our culture says things that are very, they sound sterile and banal, but they're not. They're actually anti-scriptural. Our culture says, follow your heart. Follow your heart. That's the thing that will lead you. Whereas Jesus teaches, no, follow me. Because your heart is actually deceitful. And if you follow it, it will be to your demise. And my light will go out in your presence. Our culture says, be true to yourself. To thine self be true. Jesus says, no. Whoever wants to be my follower actually must deny yourself and follow me. There's no way to follow me if you're following yourself. Our culture says, believe in yourself. Jesus says, believe in me. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. I am the only way to the Father. Our culture says, live your truth. This is my truth. Jesus says, I am the truth. You will know the truth in me, and that truth will set you free more than any other. Our culture says, as long as you're happy, that's all that matters. Jesus teaches, well, I don't know. What will it profit a man if he or she gains the whole world but loses their soul? It's a good word to us all. If you attach your security or your significance, like the church at Pergamum seemed to have been doing, to anything other than God, it will never be enough is one thing, because the God-sized hole in your heart can only be filled with God. But more to the point specifically, it causes the light of the church, well, the light in your life to diminish. And the light of the church is dependent upon the light that's in your life coming together and illuminating with the light of everyone else. Our light diminishes. Our greatest contribution is not in elevating ourselves. I think that's what Pergamum was into. They were kind of proud of their status as a town, and this was seeping into the church. Your greatest contribution is not in elevating yourself. That's not the teaching of Jesus. You elevate yourself by elevating other people. The first will be last, and the last will be first. The reason why Jesus tied a towel around his waist and washed his disciples' feet was to show them, if you're going to follow me, it's not about focusing on elevating yourself. God will bless you and will elevate you, but let God do it. This isn't about you elevating yourself. Jesus had 4 favorite fishermen: Peter, James, John, and Andrew. John was one of them. John, the writer of Revelation. Peter, James, and John would eventually argue about who was the greatest, wanting to elevate their status. It's not a condition that you and I are immune from just because we're in the church. Who's higher? Who's lower? Why are you always looking on Facebook, comparing your life to people on Facebook? Because status is a thing. And the 2 boys were brought to Jesus by the mother. Can they sit on your left and right when you get into your kingdom? What a joke, getting your mother to do that. But the point I want to make now is, as she brought them to Jesus, Jesus is standing here, she's bringing her 2 boys. I would be so embarrassed. Can my boys sit on your right and your left? Look at this scene. Here's Jesus, the mother, the boys right and left. They're on Jesus right and left. They're already there. We want to elevate our status so bad when, if we're following Jesus, our status is already elevated. We are already there by the Father. You're already where God wants you. And you are going to move forward if you keep following Jesus, not if you try to elevate your own status. So I want to definitely get to the hidden manna. Jesus says in the letter, for those who overcome, for those who don't let the culture of this Pergamum around you seep into your church, for those who overcome, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, I will give him the hidden manna. What in the world is that? The hidden manna. And not only says that, he says, I will give him a white stone with a new name. I'm going to give you a new name. I'll give you hidden manna, and I'm going to give you a nickname. What does that mean? What is hidden manna? Well, again, hyperlink. If you want to know what hidden manna is, you first got to know what manna is. Recall, in the wilderness wandering, when they were going through a hard time, but being led to God's preferred future, when they had no sustenance on their own. They had to be humble. They could not be prideful about their life. Being led to God's preferred future, being elevated only because of God towards a preferred future. In that place, God fed them. In that place, God fed them. Now, to some extent, that's hidden manna. You won't know about manna coming to feed you unless you open yourself up to humbly following God to some preferred future for you. Manna would come daily and would feed them. Hidden manna. Jesus would take this idea and would say, man does not live on bread alone, but by the very word of God. Part of the manna for you and I is right here. Humbly submitting ourselves to the word of God. Man does not live on bread alone, but by the very word of God. He would say in John 6:33, the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives you life. He would say to his followers, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood as the bread of life, you have no place with me. Jesus himself becomes for us the hidden manna. Not everyone eats the same food. There's plenty of food out in the world. Here's how it's kind of hidden. There's plenty of food out in the world. You have a lot of choices for what kind of food you eat. And not everyone eats the same food, right? Some people out there are acquiring a taste for food that is way, way, way more healthy for their body. And in that sense, some people are eating food that is hidden to other people. They don't understand it. In the same way, there's a lot of influences out in the world. There are a lot of words out in the world trying to catch our attention. A lot of words. And some of those words are right here. Which words are capturing your attention more than any other? In that way, this can become for you hidden manna. But what I think more than anything about hidden manna is the time that we spend in relationship with God, where God feeds our souls and gives us strength for the journey that he's called us to. And in that place, as we do that, as we submit ourselves to God, even as we walk through a Pergamum type of culture, God starts to reveal things to us that he doesn't reveal to anyone else. Now, I'm going to close here, okay? God will say things to you as you overcome this culture creep in your life and feed yourself on God's word. Eventually, God says things to you that he will say to nobody else. And that, I think, is the hidden manna. And that's where the nickname, the name on the white stone, the name that only you know from the God who is the one that gives it, that's where that comes into play. Now, hear me here. This answers a question, I think, that I've asked for some years and have never had an answer to. I've always wondered why John was called by Jesus, given a nickname, okay, name on a white stone, Son of Thunder. You know he was given that nickname. A lot of people get nicknames in Scripture. Peter, Rock, Saul, Paul, Jacob gets the name Israel. John, Son of Thunder. What is up with that? Why Son of Thunder? Well, you may or may not know this, but as I continued during the study reading Revelation, in Revelation chapter 10, I promise I'm landing the plane right here, don't worry. Jesus reveals to John this thunder that makes a particular noise, and in the thunder it speaks. The thunder actually says something. And John goes to write it down. And when the seventh, this is Revelation chapter 10, verse 4. When the seventh thunder spoke, I was about to write. I mean, what an amazing scene. The thunders are speaking. I'm about to write it down. But I heard a voice from heaven say, seal up what the seven thunders have said and do not write it down. Okay, so get this. You may have read that before and just glossed right over it. The thunder speak. They say something. John's going to write it down. Jesus says, don't write that down. That's just between you and me. These thunder spoke. John's the only person that ever heard them, and only he and God knows what they said. Now, I guess he does brag a little bit because he did put it in Revelation, but no one ever found out what those thunders said. Just him and just God. And this is probably why Jesus gave him the nickname Son of Thunder. I had never put those 2 points together. But major point for you and for me, as we overcome the culture creep and spend our time getting our status and significance from the Word of God, God speaks to us things that he's not saying to anyone else. Hidden manna. And in that place, in that intimate place, we get named anew. All right. So there's plenty of food out there.